There we go. Okay, welcome back to another episode of Diary of an SEO. We're joined by Andrew Peluso today, coming all the way from Austin. Thank you so much for coming on, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here and chat. I'm smiling already just because we've had such a good time, catching up and talking beforehand. So this is great.
Yeah, for the listeners, I was in Austin last month and it's just become my favorite place I've ever been to. I'm going back in February. But Andrew, while we were there, I was over there with a few friends and messaged Andrew, and we'd been eating out at taco shops and some incredible food. And he was like, come on round and I'll cook a barbecue. It'll be the best food you've had in Austin so far. And because we were eating out for like 2 weeks, it was proper, like homemade, wholesome barbecue. There's some kind of shrimp, there was chicken, there was guacamole.
Potatoes.
Insane.
Yeah, we did it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, it was really, really good. So thank you for hosting such a great night. But anyway, I think we could talk about Austin for about an hour on this. But first thing I want to jump into, Andrew, is one thing that we deal with a lot with our clients is that they want SEOs to have side projects, anything that they can go and experiment their skills on, see what they can kind of do. I seen your tweet yesterday about the solar eclipse project, and I think that would be a great start to get into this. So tell us a bit about what you're trying to do with this.
Yeah, well, there's a solar eclipse here in April, on April 8th, and I just figured right place, right time. It could be a fun project to try to take advantage of what I imagine is going to be tens of thousands of people who will be in Austin at that time for the solar eclipse. So I'm attacking it on three fronts. The first is obviously SEO. So I bought eclipseaustin.org, threw up the bare bones of that site yesterday, and so still working through getting the theme and everything up and running, create the content. So that'll be one play. I'm thinking affiliate and ad revenue. The second play is social media. So I created ATX Eclipse. I think it's ATX Eclipse on TikTok, ATX Eclipse on Instagram. So I'm going to be creating content there, which I'm already on my daily walk or walks. I already go where I know most people are going to want to see the eclipse from. So it's so easy for me to just throw up my camera, you can see it from here. You can see it from here. It'll just be super easy content to create. And then the third, which I actually think may end up making me the most money from this, is I'm buying 1,000 or 2,000 solar eclipse glasses on Alibaba, having them shipped out here, hiring someone on one or two people on Craigslist to then just like hustle them. So you can buy them for 40 cents on Alibaba. I can give the people who are selling them $1 per glasses that they sell. So they'll just be straight commission to incentivize, align incentives. And I think they can probably sell them for like $5, maybe even more, especially on the day of when everyone's like, oh crap, I don't have glasses and everything is sold out or I came unprepared. So yeah, that's the idea. And I figure with the right kind of hustle and getting it done, maybe about 50 hours of work, hopefully no more than that, could make like $15,000. Just be like a random fun experiment to do for a few months.
I love that. I think that's such a good idea. I seen the tweet earlier and I was like, do I have to get out to Austin and try and do a bit of competitiveness for this as well?
Dude, I'm telling you, if I didn't live, you've been to my place, right? And so right across the street, you were here at nighttime, but I'm right across the street from Zilker Park, which has got to be the #1 destination for this eclipse. So if you just stand outside, trying to sell glasses, I think it's kind of a no-brainer in terms of being able to turn a profit. So anyways, it's all just for fun. Like maybe I'll make no money at all, but it'll be a ridiculous little experiment anyways.
But as well as that, so your view, so you live in high up in a skyscraper. Do you get the view of the solar eclipse from your apartment?
We must, yeah, because we can see the sun at any, like from sunrise to sunset, we can see the sun from our spot.
Dude, you should do like a VIP spot up
That
to
was
the
another thing
apartment.
that actually came to mind. And the only downside of that is that I think I have some friends coming out on the day of. So if I didn't have a bunch of people coming out who I would like wanted to take care of and host and make sure they had a good time, then I probably would just like go into full hustle mode and like do a VIP event with a party and like just really make a whole thing out of it. But that would be take up too much time and I wouldn't be able to show my people enough love. So I'm just gonna skip that one for now, probably.
Cool. Well, look, you'll have to update us all on Twitter how it goes. I've seen that you're going to like build it in public, so I'm interested in that. I'm sure Darius is. I'm sure a lot of people will be that listen to this.
Yeah,
But
keep it posted.
Andrew, the next thing I'd love to get into is you hear a lot of people within SEO, they want to start either an agency, they want to start an affiliate side, and they just don't know what niche to get into. I've heard from your side how you've picked your niches, but you own 3 agencies, and one of them is in the pest industry. How did you come up with that niche, and kind of what was your strategy before to going into it, that you think that you could make money from it, that there was a need for you to come in?
Yeah. So at this point, I have 2 agencies. The first one I ever started, Websaw Studio, was mostly a design shop, and that one I parted ways with my partner there in 2019 to start Bananas Marketing, and then at the beginning of 2022, I and a co-founder incorporated Pesty Marketing, PESTY, and we started Pesty Marketing. I started Pesty Marketing because I recognized that I had gone from a design agency, we'll do any design for anyone, which is like way too broad, to, okay, well, my skill set is in marketing, so we'll do SEO and some PPC for anyone. To, okay, let's narrow that focus a little bit more. So then Bananas Marketing eventually evolved to, we do search engine marketing, organic and paid, for service businesses, specifically with like some sort of local focus. And that still wasn't niche enough because we weren't differentiated enough, and it wasn't obvious enough for people that we were the choice, the company that they should go with for their marketing. And I had worked in pest control about 10 years ago. I sold pest control door to door, actually. So I knew the industry because I had sold it. I knew customer pain points. You still remember little bits and pieces of the pitch. I had even done a little bit of technician work at the time. So I always kept my eye on it. And, but I had also been having a good experience working with one client in particular who is in the managed IT services space. So for me, it all came down to what's the opportunity, meaning market size. Can people afford the services? Is there a need? And what does the competition look like? And so I did interviews. We actually did free work for a pest control company in the beginning, really try to dig into understanding their pain points. I also did a bunch of interviews with people in the managed IT services space. And again, pain points, like what are you willing to pay? What do you try? And partly because I knew the pest control space so well, so I could speak their language, and partly because I looked around at the competition and I was just incredibly unimpressed with the options that pest control companies had. I knew that we could come in and I could immediately connect with these people because I knew what their priorities were to some degree. And I also knew that within, a couple of years, we could be the best pest control marketing agency in the industry. And so I ended up starting the Pesty Marketing, and that was kind of the genesis of it.
Perfect. And Andrew, when you sort of found that niche and obviously started gaining the clients, how did you start building out your team? Did you go for sort of a top-down approach, finding somebody very senior who could pick up the work quickly? Or did you want to create sort of maybe bring in somebody junior who can follow your sort of very same footsteps and do the processes the way you would like them to do it?
Yeah, definitely the latter. Partly because and I'll be totally transparent with you guys throughout this process. So if you want to ask, questions around numbers or anything at all. So when we finished the year in 2022, our agency, I think we finished the year at around $380,000 in revenue, maybe $350,000 in revenue. So when that's all you're making and you're not fundraising, and at that point we probably had 8 clients or so, there's really not a lot of financial room to like hire someone super senior, right? Because they're going to demand like a third of your revenue as their salary, as they should, right? So that's fair. So really, since starting Bananas, I've always tried to hire people, trying to find diamonds in the rough, like people um, who don't necessarily have the experience. And I have made some of the biggest mistakes I've made actually is trying to hire someone with the experience over the soft skills that I maybe recognized in someone else. So yeah, for me, it's really been try to find people who are hungry, curious, and seem like smart, seem like they could really excel in the job.
Mm-hmm. And if we just go back a step to when you first started the pesty, and you said you took on a client, did free work for them. If somebody was in that same boat, what kind of way did you go about that? When did you start charging? Was there a certain amount of months that you said that you were going to work, and if you didn't see results, that you would drop them? What way did that work?
No, it was never. There was never really an ask other than we want to build you a new website. We want to help you with SEO, and that's it. Because the exchange of value was we'll do a bunch of free work for you, and what that's going to give us is data. We were just trying to we were purchasing data. That was the way I looked at it. Was we're going to get to talk to this business owner. We're going to get to learn. I'm going to get a refresher on all the things that I probably forgot, since it's been a long time since I worked in pest control. We're going to get to study the numbers and try to understand, how much does this company make? How much is a customer worth to them in terms of average order value, customer lifetime value? Does this company use a CRM? If so, what data do they have? And also, what kind of competition are we looking at in terms of who they're competing against in Southern California? Because that's where this client was. So we were never really worried too much about trying to monetize that client. It really was just like, let's get someone in our portfolio, someone with that we could now also go to other pest control clients and say, hey, we have a client. They may not be paying us. You can leave that part out, but like we have someone that we're rebuilding their website, or we rebuilt the website, we do their SEO. Here's how things are going. And that gave us a little bit of, getting that first client can be really hard, especially if you're trying to get people to pay you. So the fact that we were able to go into future conversations by saying we're already working with this company, it was just all of that meant it was totally worth it for us to do free work.
Yeah, we when we first started off, we actually did that for one of our clients, where we hired them a technical SEO manager for free, and they ended up paying us for it, which was a great day. But yeah, I think especially when you start a business, I think the review that you can get from that, the testimonial you can get from that, the results that you can then showcase other clients, is a great way to just get started. Our next question, Andrew, is the marketing and agency landscape is constantly evolving, especially now, I feel like more than ever. How do you stay in front of industry trends?
Yeah, I'll answer that in two ways. I think number one is that fundamentally, SEO and marketing in general doesn't actually change that much, because marketing is all about human behavior, and human behavior really doesn't change, certainly not within like our lifetime. So there's trends and things to jump on. And I do find myself, getting like shiny red object syndrome, where I see all the thing everyone's doing, this hack and that hack and this tool and that tool. So I get the temptation there, and sometimes there's value there. But I try to stay grounded and remember that, like, fundamentally, there's just certain things that are good to do, and if you just execute those really, really, really well, then that is going to take care of the bulk of the outputs of the results that you're going to get. Second way I'll answer that question is, we do stay on top of some industry trends, in particular things like the use of AI. And I have resources. I find Twitter, because it's a lot of early adopters there, to be a really good resource for understanding industry trends. I really like the newsletter Ben's Bites, which is always, every day sending out something, sharing about latest updates with AI. And then ultimately, all this stuff just comes down to testing, because there's a lot of people who have an opinion about one thing or another in theory, but until you actually implement and test in the field, in the real world, on your own, you don't. It's going to be really hard to know whether or not something works. So staying ahead of things, yeah, I would say Twitter, Ben's Bites, these Slack groups that we're a part of can be helpful. And then actually making sure that we're leveraging some of these things if we feel like it's going to be potentially beneficial, to see, like, does this actually work and how well.
Brilliant. And Andrew, are there any sort of internal systems or processes that you wish you could go back in time and tell yourself when you started the agency to start using it now or straight away?
Yeah, I mean, the agencies or any business that really is able to, I shouldn't say any business, but agencies in particular, service businesses in particular, in order to properly scale, you have to have phenomenal documentation in place. And you can get to the point even that we are now without the most amazing organized documentation. In fact, I spent hours yesterday going in and cleaning up our documentation in Google Drive. And I'm going to spend a lot of today moving a lot of that into Notion and trying to really clean things up going into 2024. We'll finish this year around, depending on what comes in and the final hour here, around 615 to 650,000 in revenue. And we got to that point with some really good documentation in place, but also plenty of disorganization. There's no way that we could even get to 1 million, and certainly not above that, without really good documentation in place. So I wish I was a little bit better at that, because and that's something I'm trying to work on, because it's just everything has to be documented, every SOP, and it's going to evolve over time, but something has to be down on paper so that you have something to reference and iterate on. It's huge.
Yeah, I spent an hour yesterday chatting with Darius all about how going forward into the new year, I want everything to be cleaned up in our processes, everything to be structured. Also, I was chatting to my dad yesterday. I figured out that the last two New Year's Eves in a row, I've been sat on ClickUp, which is where we use for our project management, just simplifying our SOPs, our processes, everything. And me and Darius actually have a call in next week to do the exact same. I'll just go through, just clean everything. And again, it just makes it easier to actually run the business when we need it. But yeah, Andrew, my next question is, you mentioned shiny object syndrome, right? So me and Craig, we brought on an advisor about a month ago. So we have weekly calls every Wednesday, right? And it's just kind of like a soundboard of this. Yeah, I've never felt so naked in my life, just showing. Nobody else has like been into our finances and our accounts and all of this. We've just stripped everything back. We've got kick up the
Dude,
teeth.
it's so exposed. It's so, like, showing people your finances, like really letting them see like your profit and loss statement, like all of it is like, it's easy to say, like, for me, saying the numbers out loud. I wish more people would like be more transparent about their numbers, and because I think context is super important, and you usually don't get context when someone has an opinion about something. So I try to share the numbers so that also anyone who's listening knows, like, this is where I'm coming from, because this is also the size of our agency, and this is like where we are. But anything I share is not necessarily going to be applicable to when you have 1 million, 2 million or more in revenue, or maybe you only have a couple 100,000 in revenue. But it's, dude, it's super exposing. People see your number. Remember when I hired an accountant for the first time, even an accountant looking at the numbers, I felt like, oh God, what are they going to see?
Yeah, well, our first call lasted 3 hours, and it was just us getting kicked in the face. Why have you done this? Why have you done that? Anyway, it's been super, super beneficial. But our bet on that is that we come, myself and Craig, my business partner, come to that call every week, and we've got new ideas here, new ideas. We can do this, and having somebody that he doesn't have any experience within our industry, but he's got like 35 years business experience, he's invested in like 30 plus companies, so he has like the business acumen, and he's just like, guys, there's so much that you haven't done right that need fixed up before we can even do that. And he's like, before we even bring in that added service or that idea that you want, like have X amount in the bank, have this all set up before you start doing that. So shiny object syndrome is something that I know me and Craig kind of, it's hard to manage. So how do you as a business owner manage shiny object syndrome from taking you completely off? Or even when you said about experimenting and testing AI and other things, like how do you stay on the track that you're meant to without veering off completely?
I mean, you might be asking the wrong person, because we did start the podcast by me telling you that I'm going to be ATX solar eclipse guy for a few minutes. Yeah, I mean, it's tough, man, especially when if you're like me, like I have ideas falling out of my ears like multiple times a day. I have notes in my phone that's just like notes. So it's tough because my brain just works in a way where I'm constantly thinking of new things and connecting dots. I mean, I think one thing that can be helpful is Twitter can be useful, but it can also be dangerous. So even though I use Twitter, I don't actually have the Twitter app on my phone. I go to it in a browser so that I'm just a little bit less tempted to actually waste time on there. And I also try my best to minimize the amount of content I read online. And I also, for the last, I guess it's probably been 18 months or so, with one exception, try not to read books that are not at least like 5, maybe 10 years old, that have really stood the test of time. So I think it's just about doing a good job of filtering, what you allow to get your attention. I mean, it's easier said than done, but if I think if I can find a way to filter out the noise, then I tend to remain focused much easier.
Do you know what's funny about that is over in Austin, we had that conversation. You told me that you don't like reading books that are over 5 to 10 years, that they've just been made, because a lot of things are just regurgitated. Everything's kind of said in the same way, but just like angled differently. And what's funny now is before I buy books, I go in and check the date. It's like you've imprinted that into my head now that I'm like checking us. Oh, it's made 2 years ago. I don't know if I can read that one.
Yeah, dude, it's just it's amazing how many books that like are hailed as so good, for a year or two, and then eventually it's just, it doesn't end up becoming like a classic. There are certain classics out there, like How to Win Friends and Influence People, or biographies on certain people, or even classic fictions that like they've stood the test of time for a reason. So that's funny. Well, hopefully you find value in that.
Yeah, I've told Darius all about it. I started that what was it called? Sorry, buying in bets. Make it. What was the
Oh,
book called again?
Thinking in
Thinking in
Bets.
Bets.
Oh, such a
And
great book.
I went down a massive rabbit hole about game theory, and that's all I talked about for about 3 weeks. Um, yeah, it's a very, very good book. But yeah, so Andrew, you've been in agency world for what, couple of years now, around 5 years. What's one lesson that you've learned throughout those few years that you wish you knew at the very start?
Yeah, so I started my first agency in 2016. So I guess it's been about 7 years now. What I wish I knew in the beginning was that niching down was as important as it was. And I don't even know if that's the case, because you're told, all the way as you start a company, if you speak with anyone who's done it before, it's so common to hear niche down, niche down, niche down. But if you go into starting a business and you don't have any money in the bank, or you're in debt, it's really hard to niche down, because saying no to any business is just so scary. But I'm just going to echo what I was told, because I now, having niched down far enough, I realize how important and useful it is to growing a business. Yeah, I would say niching down is the most important thing. You can always move into a different vertical or add services later, but in the beginning, it's hard enough to be the best at solving one problem. So trying to solve multiple problems to multiple people is just, it's an impossible task.
Right, and Andrew, just before we came on the live, you said that you have two new starters in January. What does their onboarding process like, and how important do you believe the onboarding process is to set up for success?
Yeah. So for one of them, I said earlier, when you asked about hiring, have I chose, people who are younger and hungrier, people with more experience? In that case, I ended up getting really, in one of their cases, I ended up getting really lucky, because she actually has about 10 years of experience of doing what she does. And we didn't have to pay her some crazy amount to get her. We just happened to catch her at the right place at the right time. She wanted to prioritize flexibility over salary, and so we're able to provide that fully remote, unlimited PTO. So for her, the onboarding is actually just give her access to all of her accounts, um, and get out of the way. Like, it's really more just like, I'm gonna let you. She's gone from Google ad specialist to senior ad specialist to manager to director, so she knows how to move all the pieces. One thing I do with every new hire, though, is the first couple hours that I'm working with someone, and the very first conversation we have is about our culture and the way that we think, and the way that I want the team to think. In fact, it's partly taken from Thinking in Bets. The idea of having healthy conversations where you disagree with other people, and you have to maintain an openness to ideas. You have to back up your claims with evidence, and you have to realize that we are all rowing the boat in the same direction. Like, we're all working on the same thing. So yeah, it's really just the first conversation is about, like, this is who we are, this is who we think about things. Speed over perfection. We have a few different philosophies that I try to ingrain. And then it's just connecting the dots. It's like, all right, let's make sure you have access to everything you need, so that there's no blockers for you to do your work. And then let's talk about, what work do we expect you to do? Like, what do I want you to accomplish? And then lastly, we're going to talk about, what are the things that I want you to accomplish short term, but also long term. Every quarter, I meet with each team member, and we talk about what the quarterly goals we set for last quarter, and were those met. And then we talk about the quarter ahead, and figure out what are our goals for the next few months. So anyways, that was a long-winded way of saying, when I onboard someone, it's first to talk about culture and how we think as a team, and then it's to handle logistics, make sure they have all the paperwork signed, access to anything they need logins to, and then third, it's to talk about the work, both in the immediate term and also in the long term. What are they focusing on?
Perfect. And when you are hiring or you are looking for a certain position, is there anything on a CV that you're looking for in particular? Like, for example, we know a lot of clients do look for people who do like side projects or affiliate sites, maybe not to the scale of your Eclipse project, but even something small that really helps them stand out. But as sort of people get older, they might not have enough time for that for sort of family reasons and stuff like that. Is there anything that you identify players with from maybe a junior level compared to a senior level?
Yeah, I'm actually, so the first thing I'm looking for, which takes up most of my time when recruiting, are red flags. The most important one being, is this someone who's jumping from job to job every year? Like if I look at a resume and that person's been jumping job to job every like 6 to 18 months, I'm just not even gonna take another second to look at anything else. That's number one. To me, that's just a sign of so many different things that I think, generally speaking, are not good, and not someone who I think would make a good member of our organization. Another red flag. Another red flag that I look for is, did they bother to include a cover letter, like, at all? And then if they did, was it obviously written entirely by ChatGPT at this point? And if they did include a cover letter, is it clear that I don't always expect a cover letter from someone, but if you want to stand out, you take the time to write a cover letter and you make it clear that you did some amount of research. Because those are the candidates that, assuming they didn't jump jobs every year, and assuming they have they took the time to customize their cover letter a little bit and express genuine interest in working in this position in our company, they almost automatically get put into the next round where we're going to do a one-way video interview. For me, that's huge, because as an employer, I'm staring at hundreds of resumes, and 90% of them will not have a cover letter. And then of those that do have a cover letter, nowadays, such a high percentage of those are written by ChatGPT. So, it's kind of the same as like doing cold email outreach. Like it doesn't take a whole lot to stand out nowadays, because you're just littered with spam that all looks and sounds the same. Let's see, other things that I look for on a resume. I really appreciate it when people talk about results and accomplishments, not just, I spent X number of years at this company and this is what I was told to do. This is what I did. That's okay. But if someone can speak to the impact that they had at their previous employers, I think that's huge. Partly because it shows that they understand how to align what they're doing with what's important to the company, and it shows me that they think in those terms. So I really like that. I'm trying to think of other things. I feel like most of my time honestly gets spent on just like highlighting red flags and moving those into the definitely not pile. And I'm, fairly liberal with who I will move into the next phase, which is one-way video interviews. So yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Well,
Brilliant.
anyone, shameless plug, but we've created a SEO interview blueprint that's free on our website that has just highlighted all of Andrew's red flags, how to avoid them. That we basically asked a lot of our clients how someone can stand out before the interview. There's not that much that needs to go into it, but it's like standing out on LinkedIn. But exactly what you said, showing SEMrush graph results of where they were, when they worked there. If they worked for a company for a long time, just taking a bit of that. One thing that we found out that our clients absolutely love from our side is candidates that have, let's say, SEMrush results on where a site tanked, and then they were able to explain why it tanked and what they did to improve it going on, which we've got. But one thing I wanted to chat on, Andrew, is you mentioned one of your core values for you and the team is speed over perfection. We had Ryan Stewart on the podcast on Tuesday, and that is just everything he talked about was speed, speed, speed. He had speed on steroids. He was talking about that he'd sign a client on Monday. He'd have writers ready to go, blogs ready to go, processes out straight away by Friday. And he thinks that's what like gave him his competitive edge. How do you cultivate speed into your team and culture?
Well, I think you have to ask of them what you need them to do. First of all, it needs to be really clear exactly what you want them to accomplish with a specific deadline in mind. And then you have to sometimes be the bad guy and really hold them accountable to doing it, especially if they don't get it done, because that is about either. And then you need to isolate, like, why was it done? Was it poor time management? Was it I mean, usually it comes down to poor time management. So I completely under appreciated how long something was going to take me. Or, well, I prioritized this other thing over this thing. Maybe they're stretched too thin. So a lot of it just comes down to that. And then also asking them to do things. In the past, I've tended to give people too much time to get things done. And then I realized that what's that principle? There's that principle that's called where people are going to take as long as the amount of time that they're given. I can't remember. It's like a law or principle or something, but it's so true. So I started just making a conscious decision to ask people to do things faster than I was previously asking them to do. And they do it. They find a way, they push themselves, they move faster because they have to. So yeah, I think those two things is just ask people to do things faster than you think they can get things done. And that's not something that I made up. That's like, if you look at just some of the greatest leaders in history, like people I've studied are like Steve and in history, but obviously currently like Elon Musk. He has overly optimistic timeline goals for his team and for himself. We were supposed to have like autonomous driving cars a long time ago, right? And we still don't have fully autonomous driving cars. Steve Jobs, same thing. Napoleon, one of the fastest moving generals, which made him one of the greatest generals of all time. The people that he led just moved so fast. He didn't let them sit around and get bored and have time to think about all the pain they were in and the fact that they were, not with their family. And then I can't remember his name, Frank Slootman, the ex CEO of, I believe it was ServiceNow, and now he's leading, I think, Snowflake. Has a couple of great podcasts where he talks about speed over everything else. Get people moving fast. And then there has to be accountability also, meaning if someone's just not cutting it, it's nothing personal, but you do have to let them go. I've gotten a lot better at hiring slow and firing fast. And the mistakes I've made in the past came from hiring too fast, not waiting for the right person. And luckily, I've been quick to fire fast, but yeah, the initiative just has to be there for your team, and the accountability has to be there.
Definitely. Alex Mosey has a great video all about that, where he talks about, I can't remember, he uses a story like on a Monday, you ask somebody to do this and they turn around while they're walking out the office and they're like, yeah, sweet, I'll get it on your desk for Friday. And it's like, well, hold on. If we do priority list, this is one of the most important things we need done. Why can't it get done by the end of the day? And then it's like just a complete different paradigm shift of when things need done. But my team were sick of hearing, I love speed. Like if something happens in our Slack channel where it's like really fast, I just in capitals, I love speed, like all the time, which I love. But yeah, Andrew, one thing that I learned from you when we were out there is you constantly like learning about new things. You like studying the greats. You gave me that podcast list. I completely forgot what it's called. But it's on my to-do.
Yeah, it's How to Take Over the World.
How to Take Over the World. Gave me a book, started reading that. You had stoic quotes all over your office. So my question is with somebody that's obviously very driven by success and growing an agency and a lot of goals within business, how do you switch off?
Uh, I, you know, mm, I don't know that there's really a quote switch off for me, because I'm doing what I do because it's just how my brain works. Like, I have always been a builder and a thinker, and even when I was an employee, like I could not be stopped. Like, when I worked as I worked as a home security technician for a company for like 2 years, and they didn't have an SOP, like a manual for their technicians. So I created one for myself. And then when I became a manager, I distributed that to all of my team. And someone else, my manager, found out. He said, "Wait, you created this?" And then everyone in the whole company ended up using it. They didn't have any kind of system for everyone worked on, you had like a salary, but then you also had a commission. And I had come from a sales background, so I knew the value in competition and being able to see how everyone was doing at all times. And they didn't have that. So I built a website where they could then use that to track the sales that all their technicians were doing. And they never ended up taking it in-house and rolling it out, but I've just never been able to really like stop. And that's okay, because I'm also an unbelievably like present person. At least I would say I'm very good at just being present. So I guess I don't really think of it as turning off, because if I'm working, like, I'm really trying to be present on the thing that I'm working on. If I'm with my girlfriend or with family or traveling or whatever, I really try to be present with those people. And and I'm also just always having fun. Like, if I'm working, I'm having fun. Stephanie, who sits right behind me, like, all day, she just sees me like bouncing some music, like just bobbing my head. I honestly don't know how she gets any work done, and she doesn't work in the office like half the time. And I think probably it's because she's looking at me and just like, I just wish she would stop moving, because I'm just like constantly in my head. I'm always like dancing and having a good time, um, and so whether that's with work and my team, or whether I'm just going out to like get more coffee and I see my girlfriend out there and I like am joking with her and hugging her and like doing whatever it is, I try to move through the world in like a very present and fun way. And that's only because of a history of having done it the other way, which is where I was taking life way too seriously, and having learned the hard way what that looks like and the stress and anxiety that can create for myself and the people around me. So now I've just learned how to be present, and so the idea of turning myself off is not something I really think about or judge myself for, because like I'm always having a good time and with the people that I'm with.
Man, I love that so much. And I can feel that as well. Like, I've had jobs in the past where all I'm doing is looking at the clock. All I'm doing is trying to do the bare minimum, get out, that kind of thing, where it's just like not having fun. And now I get to work on a business that I'm genuinely passionate about. Like, I'll come off a client call. I've got happy dances. I'm listening to this. My dad showed me a new band called The Scratch, I think. And it's like an Irish band, but like modern day band. And I've been listening to it all week. And again, happy dancing, working away, this, and the other, which I absolutely love, man. And I think it's quite hard for a lot of my friends who don't particularly like their jobs. They're always like, "Josh, you need to stop working. You need to do this." And it's like, well, when I work, I'm enjoying myself. Like, I'm like if I had to do anything in the world, I'd probably still choose to do this. I still go to the gym and travel and do all the fun stuff. But it's like when you've got a path that you genuinely think is purposeful and you get enjoyment out of it, then I don't think work becomes work anymore. It becomes play. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're doing as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be certain tasks that like I just really don't want to be doing. Like, there's when you get into the weeds with SEO, there are certain very manual, laborious, like staring at a spreadsheet, going through things like row by row, that are not my favorite by any means. And so there are plenty of those moments where I it does feel a little bit like being in the office. And I've at this point I've delegated most of that away, and I'll continue to delegate more and more of that until I don't have to do the things that I just completely just, destroy my energy. But yeah, and I also wonder too, I mean, this is getting a little like esoteric, but I also do wonder, like, am I actually doing the thing that if I could do anything in the world, I'd be doing it? Because I do really enjoy what I'm doing. I love building, I love managing a team, I love learning. And also at the same time, I do know that I have there's some sort of ceiling I've put on myself that is this invisible force where I wish I was better at thinking bigger. And I wonder if I were to actually go after the thing that I really wanted, if that is something else, because I had a mind where I could just have much bigger goals and bigger dreams. What else would I be doing? And the problem is I don't know, because I haven't figured out a way to get myself to think really, really, really big. But for now, and while I'm building what I'm building here, yeah, I think this is great. I definitely enjoy what I do, and I really enjoy working with my team as well.
Well, I think as well on that, Andrew, from what you just said, I personally believe that we all have different vehicles to get to different destinations in life. And then the next vehicle, you come on with more artillery, more skills, more knowledge to get to the next one. I'm a big believer as well that what's meant for you won't pass you by. But I feel you on that as well. And my last question for you, Andrew, is we're going into 2024. 2023 has been a rocky year for a lot of companies. I personally think things are going to boom in 2024. I don't know why. I've got a gut feeling that we're going to start picking up again. Hopefully the economy starts to make a small dent of recovery at least. What's your big plans for 2024? Where are you going?
Yeah, and it's I've heard that a lot from other agencies. We just because we've grown quite a bit this year, or at least relative to the size that we were last year, both in terms of revenue growth and also in terms of hires. We started the year and it was 3 of us full time. Going into next year, it will be 7 of us full time. So and these last couple of hires, the intention of those hires was were the last steps in me being able to step away from being in the weeds on the day-to-day work. We hired a project manager and we hired a Google Ads specialist. And that put the final pieces in play for me to now focus almost entirely on marketing and sales. Q1 historically is a really good time of year for inbound leads. So yeah, I feel you. I feel really good about going into next year. I feel really good about where Pesty is and where Bananas is. My intention is to double down on more than double down, 10x down on social media, especially on LinkedIn, because I think I can get some good traction there, and I think that's a great way to nurture relationships and get in front of the right people. I plan to attend more industry conferences, specifically in pest control, hopefully do a little bit of speaking, and then to connect with those people on LinkedIn and nurture those relationships by just posting really valuable content. And also to actually put aside a bit more of a budget for digital advertising. We've been running Google Ads for the last couple of years for Pesty, and that has worked well. But I would like to leverage some of these directories more. Like for Bananas marketing, we have in the States, I don't know if you guys have it, we have Clutch, which is like the best directory for agencies if you want leads, at least in my experience. There's a couple others that we may also want to test out. And then it's to spend more of my time doing stuff like this, podcasting, guest post. So yeah, going into next year, it's just really about me going into a much more full-time marketing and sales role, and maximizing our fulfillment until we need to make the next hires. And so I'm sure I'll spend some of my time next year recruiting really good talent as well.
Awesome. Sounds like you've got a great year ahead of you. So Andrew, if people want to follow your journey on LinkedIn, Twitter, where can they find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I mean, if you just Google me, I think Andrew Peluso, I'm pretty sure my LinkedIn profile is the first one that shows up. On Twitter, I believe I'm Peluso_Andrew. On LinkedIn, it's LinkedIn/in/Andrew Peluso. Somehow I got lucky, and I guess because I was in the digital space, I just kind of locked in my name everywhere. But yeah, and then, if you're into eclipses, then you can find me as ATX Solar Eclipse on TikTok and Instagram.
Awesome. We'll put all the links below in the show notes so that they can come find you. So thank you very much, Andrew. I'm going to end the recording now.